I will never forget the moment my brother Hayes stood at my grandmother's 80th birthday party, grabbed the microphone without permission, and declared in front of 200 of Charlotte's elite that I was being removed from the family. Not fired from the company, removed from the family itself, as if I were some kind of cancerous growth that needed to be cut out. He pointed his finger directly at my face, his eyes gleaming with a cruelty I had seen 1,000 times before, but never quite this publicly, and announced that his first decision as the new CEO would be to eliminate parasitic elements. The crowd gasped. My parents, Richard and Jennifer Harper, stood up and applauded. I remained frozen in my seat, my hands gripping the stem of my wine glass so tightly I thought it might shatter, but I refused to let my face show anything. Not shock, not pain, nothing. Because I knew something Hayes didn't. I knew that in exactly 45 seconds, his entire world was about to collapse. But before I tell you how that happened, before I show you the most satisfying moment of my entire life, I need you to do something for me. If you have ever felt invisible in your own family, if you have ever been the one who gave everything and got nothing in return, if you have ever been called selfish for having boundaries, then hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel because I am going to tell you exactly how I went from being the family scapegoat to the one writing the rules. And drop a comment below telling me, have you ever had to cut off a toxic family member? Because I promise you, by the end of this story, you will understand why sometimes walking away is not cruel. It is survival. Now let me take you back to where this all started. Not 6 months before that party, but 12 years before. 12 years of systematic destruction of my self-worth that I was too blind to see until it was almost too late. I graduated summa cum laude from Duke with a double major in finance and economics at 22. I had worked 3 jobs to pay tuition because when I asked my father for help sophomore year, he said Hayes needs a new car, Sage. We cannot afford both. Hayes was 17 and had just totaled his second BMW. But sure, he needed a new car. I needed more loans. I had offers from Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan Chase. Anyone would have launched my career. But 2 weeks before graduation, my father called with an order, not a request. You are coming home to work for Harper Industries. You owe us that much. You owe us. Those words haunted me for years. What did I owe them for being the afterthought? For having to earn love while Hayes got it freely for existing? But I went home. I sacrificed what I wanted for what the family needed. I started as a junior analyst making $45,000. Hayes started as VP of Strategic Development at 25, making $120,000 plus bonuses. His GPA was 2.1. He failed economics twice. But he was VP. I spent 2 years cleaning up financial messes from decades of nepotism. I restructured debt, renegotiated contracts, turned bleeding properties profitable. By year 3, I had saved the company $15 million. My raise was $3,000. Hayes got an unlimited company card and a new title. Senior VP of Business Innovation. He had never innovated anything except new ways to expense strip clubs as business meals. My mother's cruelty came coated in sweetness. Every Sunday at 7 a.m. she would call after I had worked until midnight. You work too much, Sage. No man wants a woman married to her job. You should be more like Hayes' girlfriend Brittany. Brittany was an Instagram influencer. Hayes cheated on with at least 2 other women. She thought a Roth IRA was a type of sushi roll. The real turning point came at 28. I was director of finance leading negotiations for a rally acquisition. 6 months of work. The night before, signing Hayes through a party and drunkenly told the CEO our company was broke and using his as a life raft. Complete lie. The CEO pulled out. 6 months destroyed because Hayes could not keep his mouth shut. When I confronted him, he laughed. Dude was boring anyway. When I went to my father with the damage report, he leaned back and said, Hayes is young. He is learning. You need to be less sensitive. Maybe if you spent less time working and more time supporting your brother, he would not act out. I sat in my car in the parking garage for an hour, feeling numbness spread through my chest like frost. That was the moment I should have quit, but I did not, because part of me still believed if I just worked harder, proved myself more, they would finally see me. By 32, I was Senior Director of Finance, essentially running all financial operations. Our CFO was a 70-year-old friend of my grandfather who golfed while I did his job, and he collected his salary. I managed a $400 million portfolio with 8 analysts. I was exhausted, not just physically from 80-hour weeks, but emotionally. Every family dinner was a performance where Hayes took credit for my projects. Every holiday reminded me I could bring expensive gifts, while Hayes showed up empty-handed and stayed the golden child. Every birthday card from my mother said the same thing. We are so proud of Hayes, and your career is nice too. The incident that started the final countdown happened on a Tuesday in March. I was in my office reviewing quarterly reports when my assistant buzzed me. Your mother is on line 1. She says it is an emergency. I picked up immediately because the last time my mother had called with an emergency, my grandmother had fallen and broken her hip. Mum, what is wrong? Is Grandma? Okay, she is fine, but I need you to come home right now. Hayes needs help with something. I felt my jaw tighten. I closed my eyes and counted to 5. Mum, I am in the middle of closing a $50 million merger. I have a call with the private equity firm in 20 minutes. This deal has been in the works for 4 months. Can it wait until tonight? Her voice went from concerned to ice cold in a fraction of a second. This is the family company, Sage. You are being selfish. Hayes needs you now. Not tonight. Now. What does he need? He deleted his business plan for his presentation tomorrow. You need to come help him redo it. I felt something inside me crack. Mum, he can redo a business plan himself. He is a senior vice president. If he cannot create a presentation without me, then he should not have that title. The line went silent for a long moment. Then she said in a voice I had heard my entire childhood, a voice that made me feel 6 years old again, if you do not come home right now and help your brother, do not bother coming to dinner on Sunday. In fact, do not bother coming around at all until you learn what family means. I should have called out her bluff. I should have said fine and hung up. But 34 years of conditioning is hard to break. So I rescheduled my meetings. I called the private equity firm and pushed our call to the next day, knowing it made us look unprofessional and desperate. I got in my car and I drove 3 hours through traffic back to the house I grew up in, a sprawling 6,000 square foot colonial that my grandmother had bought for my parents as a wedding gift, a house they had never earned and never appreciated. When I walked in the door, I found Hayes exactly where I knew he would be. Sprawled on the leather sectional in the living room, wearing a VR headset, screaming at someone through his microphone about a game I did not recognise. There were empty beer bottles on the coffee table. It was 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. I walked over and pulled the headset off his head. He jerked back, annoyed. What the hell? Sage, where is your business plan that you needed help with? I drove 3 hours because Mum said you had an emergency. He blinked at me like I had just spoken Mandarin. Oh, that. Yeah, I did not actually delete anything. Mum just said that to get you here. Dad needs you to pick up my dry cleaning. I have a photo shoot tomorrow for Charlotte Business Journal. They are doing a feature on young entrepreneurs. I felt something shift in my chest. Something fundamental. You are joking. He shrugged and put his headset back on. Nope. Keys are on the kitchen counter. And grab me food while you're out. Somewhere good. Not that rabbit food you eat. He turned away from me and went back to his game. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 30 seconds. Then I heard my father's voice behind me. Good, you are here. While you are out, stop by the tailor and pick up Hayes's suit. He needs it for tomorrow. I turned around slowly. My father was standing in the doorway of his home office, holding a glass of scotch even though it was the middle of the day. I am a senior director of finance for a $400 million company. I am not a personal assistant. His eyes narrowed. You are a member of this family, and you will help your brother, or you can find another family to work for. That night at dinner, I sat between my mother and Hayes at the long mahogany table that had hosted 1,000 uncomfortable meals. My mother had made pot roast Hayes's favourite. She had not asked me what I wanted. She never did. Hayes was talking loudly about the photo shoot, about how the journalist had already told him they were considering him for the cover, about how he was going to be the face of the new generation of business leaders in Charlotte. My father was nodding along proud. My mother was beaming. And I was invisible. I might as well have been a piece of furniture. Then my father picked up a set of car keys from beside his plate and threw them across the table at me. They hit my chest and clattered onto my plate, splashing gravy onto my blouse. Take those tomorrow and go get Hayes's suit from the tailor first thing. He needs to look perfect. I looked down at the keys. Then I looked up at my father. No. The table went silent. My mother's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Hayes looked up from his phone. My father's face darkened. What did you just say? I said no. I have a job. I have responsibilities. I cancelled important meetings today to drive here for a fake emergency. I am not Hayes's errand runner. Find someone else. My mother's hand came down on the table so hard the glasses rattled. Do not take that tone with your father. You are part of this family and you will help your brother. This is how we support each other. Support. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. When have any of you ever supported me? When have any of you ever come to one of my presentations? When have any of you ever asked about my deals or my career or my life? When have any of you ever done a single thing for me that you did not do out of obligation? Hayes leaned back in his chair, that infuriating smirk on his face that I had seen 1,000,000 times. He picked up his wine glass and took a long, slow sip. Then he set it down and looked directly at me. You want to know the truth, Sage? You are just an employee. You get a paycheck. That is your support. I am the one who carries the Harper name forward. I am the heir. You are the help. I am the emperor, and you are the servant. Do you understand your place? Now I looked at my mother, waiting for her to say something. Anything? She just looked down at her plate. I looked at my father. He was nodding slowly, like Hayes had just said something profound. And in that moment, sitting in that dining room with these people who shared my DNA but had never known me, had never valued me, had never loved me, I felt the last thread of hope snap. I stood up from the table. I left the keys where they had fallen. I walked out of that house without another word. I got in my car and I drove back to Charlotte. And on that drive, in the darkness of I-85, with nothing but the sound of my tyres on asphalt and the reflection of headlights in my rearview mirror, I made a decision. I was done sacrificing. I was done trying to earn love from people who were incapable of giving it. I was done being the scapegoat. If they wanted to treat me like an employee, then I would act like one. And employees who are undervalued and disrespected leave. But I was not going to just leave. I was going to make sure they understood exactly what they were losing. The next morning, I started digging. Really digging. I had access to every financial system in the company, every account, every transaction, every receipt, and I started following the money. It did not take long to find the discrepancies. Hayes had a company credit card that he had been using like a personal bank account for years. Bottle service at clubs, luxury hotel rooms, shopping sprees, cash advances that went straight into his personal checking account. But that was just the surface. When I dug deeper, I found wire transfers. Money moving from company accounts into offshore LLCs that I had never heard of. Amounts that were small enough to avoid triggering automatic audits, but large enough to add up. Over the course of 5 years, Hayes had siphoned nearly $400,000 out of Harper Industries. He had been stealing from his own family's company, and he had been clever about it, spreading it across multiple accounts, hiding it in expense reports that my father approved without reading, burying it in subsidiary accounts that nobody monitored because everyone trusted the golden boy. But Hayes was not as smart as he thought he was. He had made mistakes, sloppy ones, and I was very, very good at finding mistakes. I compiled everything, every transaction, every receipt, every forged signature, every fake invoice. I built a file that was 200 pages long with exhibits and supporting documentation. It was airtight. Any forensic accountant would take one look at it and know exactly what Hayes had done. Any prosecutor would salivate over it. I put it all on a flash drive, encrypted it, and I made 3 copies. 1 in a safe deposit box at my bank, 1 with my personal attorney, and 1 that I carried with me at all times. Then I went to see my grandmother. Evelyn Harper was 79 years old at the time, about to turn 80. She lived in a beautiful estate on the lake, a place she had bought with her own money long before she married my grandfather. She had built Harper Industries alongside him back when they were just 2 kids, with a dream and a willingness to work 20-hour days. She was sharp-shrewd, and she did not suffer fools. She had always been kind to me in a distant way, the way a queen might be kind to a lesser noble. But I had never really known her. She kept herself apart from the family drama, claiming she was too old to deal with politics. But I knew the truth. She saw everything. She just chose not to intervene. Until now. I called her and asked if I could visit. She told me to come Saturday afternoon. When I arrived, she was sitting on her back porch, overlooking the water-drinking tea from a china cup that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She was wearing pearls and a cream-coloured sweater set. She looked like old money personified. I sat down across from her, and I did not waste time with pleasantries. "Grandma, I need to show you something, and then I need to ask you if you want to save this company or let it die." She raised one perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "That is quite an opening, Sage. Show me." I handed her the flash drive and my laptop. I walked her through everything, every piece of evidence, every crime, every dollar Hayes had stolen. She did not interrupt. She did not gasp. She just read, her eyes moving across the screen with the precision of someone who had read 10,000 financial documents in her lifetime. When she finished, she closed the laptop and set it on the table between us. Then she poured herself more tea, added a lump of sugar, stirred it slowly, and took a sip. Finally she spoke. "How long have you known? 3 weeks. Why are you bringing this to me and not to the board?" "Because the board is filled with my father's friends who will sweep this under the rug to protect Hayes. And because you are the only person in this family who has ever built anything real. You are the only one who might actually care that we are 6 months away from collapse if this continues." She studied me for a long moment. Her eyes were the same shade of grey as mine. I had always wondered if I got them from her. "What do you want, Sage? I want justice. I want Hayes to face consequences. And I want control of this company before he destroys everything you and Grandpa built." She smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator recognizing another predator. "You have been paying attention. Good. I always knew you were the smart one. Hayes thinks he is going to inherit this company. Your parents think that they are going to maintain their board positions and their salaries while contributing nothing. They are all wrong." She stood up slowly, setting her teacup down with a delicate clink. "Come with me." We drove to downtown Charlotte in her Mercedes, which she still drove herself despite her age. She took me to the office of Thomas Brennan, the family's attorney for over 30 years. He was a man in his 60s with steel grey hair and a reputation for being absolutely ruthless in contract negotiations. Evelyn had called ahead. When we arrived, he had documents already prepared. I sat in his conference room surrounded by law books and the smell of old leather, and I watched as he laid out the plan. Evelyn was transferring her controlling shares in Harper Industries to me, 62% of the company. The documents were dated that day. They would be filed with the state immediately. It would take 3 business days for everything to be official. But once it was done, I would be the majority shareholder. I would control the board. I would control everything. Thomas looked at me over his reading glasses. Miss Harper, do you understand what you are agreeing to? You will have a target on your back the moment this becomes public. Your family will not take this well. I understand. And you are prepared for the consequences I have been preparing my entire life. He nodded. Then let's begin. We spent 4 hours in that office. I signed document after document, stock transfer agreements, new bylaws, amendments to the corporate charter. Evelyn signed beside me, her signature steady and sure. When it was done, Thomas collected everything into a leather portfolio. I will file these with the Secretary of State first thing Monday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, you will officially be the majority owner of Harper Industries. Congratulations, Miss Harper. You just bought yourself a company and a war. Evelyn touched my hand briefly. The best hunters are the ones who wait for the fattest prey. Are you ready to hunt Sage? I had never been more ready for anything in my entire life. Yes. Then we wait for my birthday party. That is when we make it public. That is when we end this. The next 3 weeks were the longest of my life. I went to work every day, pretending nothing had changed. I sat through meetings where Hayes pitched ideas that made no sense. I listened to my father praise him for initiatives I had designed. I smiled and nodded and played the role I had always played, but inside I was counting down. The documents were filed. The transfer was complete. I owned the company. I just had not told anyone yet. Hayes was getting more aggressive as Grandma's birthday approached. He was convinced she was going to announce him as CEO at the party. My mother had apparently promised him as much, though she had no authority to make that promise. He started making power plays at work, trying to undermine me in front of my team, talking about all the changes he was going to make once he was in charge. He told one of my analysts that her position was being eliminated in the restructuring. She came to me in tears. I told her not to worry, that things were going to change very soon. She looked at me skeptically, like I was in denial about my own impending termination. I did not blame her. From the outside, it looked like I was about to be pushed out, if only she knew. The Wednesday before the party, I had a meeting with our private equity partners to finalise the merger I had been working on. $50 million. It was the biggest deal of my career, and it was finally coming together. I was on a video call with their team when Hayes walked into my office without knocking. He stood behind my chair in view of the camera, and he interrupted me mid-sentence. Hey Sage, after this meeting, can you make copies of my presentation for tomorrow? My assistant is out sick. I kept my expression neutral. I am in the middle of a negotiation. We will talk later. He laughed and leaned down so his face was next to mine on the camera. Come on, it will only take you 20 minutes. You are good at that stuff. The people on the other end of the call looked uncomfortable. I apologised and muted my microphone. Hayes, get out of my office right now or I will have security remove you. He held up his hands in mock surrender. Whoa, someone is sensitive. Fine, but I need those copies by 5. He left. I unmuted and apologised again. The lead partner on the call, a woman named Catherine Chen, who I had been working with for months, said, Is he always like that? Only on days that end in Y. She laughed, but I could see the question in her eyes. If that is the future of your company, why are we doing this deal? I wanted to tell her. I wanted to say that in 3 days everything was going to change. But I could not. Not yet. So I just said, trust me. The future of this company is going to look very different very soon. The night before the party, I stayed at my apartment in Charlotte. I did not go home. I told my mother I had too much work to do. She was furious. You are being selfish, Sage. This is your grandmother's 80th birthday. We need you here to help set up. I told her I would be there tomorrow for the party. That would have to be enough. But at 11 p.m, someone started pounding on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole and saw Hayes. He was drunk, stumbling drunk. I considered not opening the door, but I knew he would just keep pounding and wake up my neighbours. So I opened it. He pushed past me, reeking of whiskey and cologne that cost too much for someone who had not earned a single dollar himself. Nice place. Must be nice living in the city, playing businesswoman, pretending you matter. What do you want, Hayes? He walked over to my kitchen counter and pulled out his wallet. He took out a stack of cash, crumpled 20s and 50s, and threw them at me. They fluttered through the air and landed on my floor. What is this? Your exit package. Take it and leave tomorrow, after Grandma announces me as CEO. I am changing the locks on the office Monday. You are done. I looked at the money on my floor. Maybe $500. Then I looked at him. You think I can be bought for $500? He laughed. You can be bought, period? You have always been for sale, Sage. You just pretend you are not. Take the money, leave quietly. If you make a scene tomorrow, I will make sure you never work in Charlotte again. I will blacklist you from every firm in the state. I smiled. I could not help it. It was probably the first genuine smile I had smiled in years. You know what, Hayes? You keep that money. You are going to need it for bus fare. He stared at me like I had lost my mind. Then he laughed harder. God, you are delusional. You actually think you matter. You actually think you are going to survive tomorrow. I am bringing a lawyer to the party, Sage. I am going to have you removed from the company entirely. You will be lucky if I let you keep your 401k. We will see. Now get out of my apartment. He left, still laughing. I closed the door behind him and locked it. Then I picked up the cash he had thrown at me. I smoothed out each bill carefully and put them in an envelope. I was going to return them to him very soon, with interest. The next day, the day of the party, I arrived at the venue 2 hours early. It was being held at the Carrington Estate, one of the most exclusive event spaces in Charlotte. My mother had spared no expense. Ice sculptures, a 10-piece orchestra, waiters in white gloves, champagne that cost $300 a bottle, flowers flown in from Ecuador. It was everything you would expect from people trying to prove they had money, even as the company that funded their lifestyle was bleeding cash. I wore a simple black dress, no jewellery except for the watch my grandmother had given me when I graduated from Duke. I had my hair pulled back in a sleek bun. I looked professional, understated, forgettable. That was intentional. I wanted to blend into the background. I wanted everyone to overlook me one last time. Hayes arrived an hour later wearing a white suit that made him look like an extra from Miami Vice. He had brought a date, a woman in her early 20s wearing a dress that was at least 2 sizes too small, and heels so high she could barely walk. He paraded her around like a trophy, introducing her to everyone as his girlfriend, even though I knew for a fact he had been seeing at least 3 other women that month. My parents arrived together, my mother in a designer gown, my father in a tuxedo. They looked like they were going to the Oscars. They greeted guests like they were royalty, like they had built this company, like they had earned any of this. The party began. Speeches were made. People toasted my grandmother, who sat at the head table looking serene and elegant in a silver gown. Hayes kept circling back to me throughout the night, making little comments loud enough for others to hear. Sage, can you grab me another drink? Oh wait, you are not working tonight. I forgot. Or Sage, have you met David Thornton? He is looking for someone to handle his personal bookkeeping. That might be more your speed. He was trying to humiliate me, trying to put me in my place one last time before what he thought was his coronation. I let him. I smiled politely. I nodded. I played the role. And every time he took a verbal shot at me, I thought about the documents sitting in Thomas Brennan's office filed with the state stamped and sealed. I thought about the flash drive in my purse with all the evidence of Hayes' theft. I thought about the look on his face when he realised he had lost. And I smiled. Dinner was served, a 5-course meal that probably cost $100 per person. Hayes got progressively drunker, progressively louder, progressively more obnoxious. At one point he stood up and clinked his glass, demanding everyone's attention, even though it was not time for toasts. He launched into a rambling speech about family and legacy and the future of Harper Industries. He talked about all the plans he had, all the changes he was going to implement. He talked about cutting dead weight and bringing in fresh ideas. And then he looked directly at me. Some people in this family understand what it means to be a Harper. They understand legacy. They understand that this company is about more than just numbers on a spreadsheet. It is about vision. And then there are people who are just employees pretending to be family. People who think a job title makes them important. Tomorrow, things are going to change. Tomorrow, we are going to remember who built this company and who just works here. The table went silent. People looked at me, waiting for a reaction. I took a sip of water and met Hayes's eyes. I raised my glass slightly, a gesture that could have been a toast or an acknowledgement. Then I set it down and said nothing. Hayes looked disappointed that he had not gotten a rise out of me. He sat down sulking. My grandmother caught my eye from across the room. She gave me the slightest nod. It was almost time. After dinner, people mingled. There was dancing. There was more champagne. And then, at exactly 9 p.m., the lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the small stage at the front of the ballroom. My grandmother stood up. The room fell silent. Everyone turned to face her, expecting her to give a thank you speech. Maybe make some sentimental remarks about family and getting older. But before she could even reach the microphone, Hayes jumped up from his seat. He was drunk enough to think he was invincible, but sober enough to still be dangerous. He crossed the room in quick strides and took the microphone from the stand before my grandmother could reach it. He turned to face the crowd, his face flushed, his eyes bright with what he thought was his moment of triumph. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate my grandmother. She is an incredible woman. She built this company from nothing. She is a legend, and tonight she is going to pass that legacy on to the next generation, to me. He paused for effect, waiting for applause that did not come. People looked confused, uncomfortable. This was not how these things were supposed to go. As the new CEO of Harper Industries, my first decision is going to be about the future of this company, about cutting out the rot, about removing the people who have been holding us back. He turned and pointed directly at me. Sage, my sister, who has worked for this company for years, who has been a loyal employee. But that is all she has ever been. An employee, not family, not really. And employees can be let go when they are no longer needed. So Sage, effective immediately, you are fired. Not just from your position, from this family. You are no longer a Harper in any way that matters. Pack your things. Get out. The room erupted. Not in applause, in shock, in whispers, in gasps. People turned to look at me. My parents stood up, and to my complete lack of surprise, they started clapping. Slowly at first. Then louder. A few of their sycophant friends joined in, people who owed my father favours, people who wanted to stay in the family's good graces. But most of the room just stared. Hayes was beaming. He had done it. He had publicly humiliated me. He had removed his competition. He had won, or so he thought. I sat completely still. My hands were folded in my lap. My expression was neutral. I felt nothing. No anger, no shame, no fear, just a deep, profound sense of calm, because I knew what was about to happen. And Hayes had no idea. My grandmother stood up. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Her presence commanded the room. Hayes, sit down, now. Hayes turned to her, still holding the microphone, still grinning. Grandma, I know this is hard, but it is necessary. Sage has been a drag on this company for too long. We need fresh energy. We need someone who understands vision. Hayes, I said sit down. The ice in her voice cut through his drunken confidence. His smile faltered, but Grandma, give me the microphone. She walked up to him and held out her hand. For a moment, he considered refusing. I could see it in his eyes. But even drunk, Even arrogant Hayes was not stupid enough to deny her in front of 200 people. He handed her the microphone. She took it and turned to face the crowd. Behind her, the large LED screen that had been displaying a slideshow of family photos throughout the night suddenly went dark. Then it flickered to life again. But instead of photos, it showed something else. Numbers, financial statements, bank transactions, line after line of expenses, wire transfers, dates and amounts, all of it highlighting Hayes' theft. The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Evelyn's voice was clear and steady. Everyone here tonight came to celebrate my 80th birthday, and I am grateful for that. But what you are really here to witness is something much more important. The death of entitlement. The end of mediocrity being rewarded simply because of a last name. My grandson, Hayes, just stood here and declared himself CEO. He just fired his sister from the family. He just humiliated her in front of all of you. And I am going to tell you something that Hayes does not know. That my son Richard does not know. That my daughter-in-law Jennifer does not know. She gestured to the screen behind her. Hayes Harper has been stealing from Harper Industries for 5 years. He has embezzled over $400,000. He has falsified expense reports. He has hidden money in offshore accounts. He has been destroying this company from the inside while pretending to be its future. And his parents, my son and his wife, have enabled him every step of the way. Not through malice, but through incompetence, through willful blindness, through their obsession with protecting their golden child at the expense of everything else. The screen changed. More documents appeared. Legal filings, stock certificates, transfer agreements, all dated 3 weeks ago, all stamped and sealed by the state of North Carolina. And now, for the good news. 3 weeks ago, I transferred my controlling shares in Harper Industries to someone who has actually earned them. Someone who has saved this company millions of dollars. Someone who has worked 80-hour weeks for 12 years while everyone else coasted on a legacy they did not build. I transferred 62% of this company to my granddaughter Sage Harper. She is now the majority owner. She controls the board. She controls everything. Sage, would you like to come up here? I stood up slowly. Every eye in the room was on me. I walked to the stage, my heels clicking on the marble floor, and I took my place beside my grandmother. I looked out at the crowd, at the shocked faces, at my parents who looked like they had been slapped, at Hayes whose face had gone from red to white to grey in the span of 30 seconds. Evelyn handed me the microphone. I had not prepared a speech. I had not planned what to say. But when I opened my mouth, the words came easily. Thank you all for being here tonight. I know this is not the evening you expected. I know this is uncomfortable, but let me be very clear about something. I did not ask for this. I did not scheme for this. I worked for this. For 12 years, I have given everything to this company. I have sacrificed relationships. I have sacrificed my health. I have sacrificed my own dreams because I believed in the legacy my grandparents built. And for 12 years, I have been treated like I was lucky to be here. Like I should be grateful for the scraps. Like I should accept being invisible because my brother had the right gender and the right amount of arrogance. I paused. Hayes tried to stand up, but my grandmother put a hand on his shoulder and pushed him back down. Security had appeared at the edges of the room. The 2 men I had hired privately. They moved closer to my family's table. I continued. As of 3 weeks ago, I became the majority shareholder of Harper Industries. As of this moment, I am exercising my authority to make the following changes. Hayes Harper, you are terminated from your position effective immediately. You will be escorted from this property tonight. We will be pursuing legal action for the $400,000 you stole. The evidence has already been turned over to our attorneys and to law enforcement. I hope you have a good lawyer. My father jumped to his feet. You cannot do this. Yes, Dad, I can. Richard Harper and Jennifer Harper, you are removed from the board of directors effective immediately. Your salaries are terminated. Your company credit cards are cancelled. You have been living off this company like parasites for decades. That ends tonight." The room exploded. People were shouting. My mother was screaming. Hayes was on his feet trying to push past security. My father was yelling something about lawyers and lawsuits, but it did not matter. It was done. The documents were filed. The power had shifted, and there was nothing they could do about it. Security escorted my parents and Hayes out of the ballroom. They went kicking and screaming, literally. Hayes was shouting threats. My mother was crying and yelling about betrayal. My father was red-faced and sputtering about injustice. The guests stood in stunned silence watching the spectacle. Some looked uncomfortable. Some looked satisfied, like they had always known Hayes was a fraud and were glad to see him finally face consequences. When they were gone, I handed the microphone back to my grandmother. She took it and addressed the room one final time. "I apologise for the disruption, but some cancers need to be cut out in public, so everyone understands they are gone. Please enjoy the rest of the evening." The music started again. People slowly began to move to talk, to process what they had just witnessed. My grandmother and I walked off the stage together. She squeezed my hand once briefly. "You did well." I nodded. I could not speak yet. The adrenaline was wearing off, and I was starting to shake. I left the party an hour later. I walked out to the parking lot and found Hayes being held back by security near the valet stand. He was still trying to get to his Range Rover. When he saw me, he lunged forward. The guards held him. "Give me my keys. Give me my car." I walked over calmly. I pulled his car keys from my purse. "This is a company car, Hayes, and the company is mine now. You can walk. It is good exercise." I threw the envelope at his feet, the one with the cash he had thrown at me the night before. "There is your bus fare. Do not lose it." The look on his face was everything I had imagined it would be. Shock, rage, disbelief, and beneath it all the first flicker of real fear. Because for the first time in his life, Hayes Harper was facing actual consequences, and there was no one left to save him. I got in my own car and drove away. I did not look back. The next 6 months were a whirlwind. I cleaned house at Harper Industries, fired the dead weight, brought in competent people who earned their positions, restructured departments, implemented real accountability. Catherine Chen's private equity firm closed the $50 million merger without a hitch. Our stock price jumped 20% in the first quarter. I promoted my best analyst to director of finance and hired Haley, my younger cousin, who had always been kind to me, as my executive assistant. I mentored her the way no one had ever mentored me, paid her well, treated her with respect, showed her that competence and hard work mattered in this family, not just last names. My parents tried to sue. Their lawyers took one look at the stock transfers and told them to drop it. Ironclad. My father went to the media claiming I stole the company. But when reporters asked about Hayes' embezzlement, they shut up fast. Hayes was arrested 4 months later. Wire fraud, tax evasion, embezzlement. I heard he was working at a used car dealership, living in a one-bedroom apartment, taking the bus. The women left when his money dried up. I felt nothing. He made his choices. My parents had to sell their house to pay back taxes they had not paid because they assumed future inheritance would cover it. They moved to a small apartment. My mother called once, crying, begging for help. I deleted the voicemail, blocked their numbers. I had given them 34 years. I did not owe them another second. 6 months after the party, I was on a yacht in the Caribbean with my grandmother and Haley, my first vacation in over a decade. The company was thriving. The board was full of people who respected me. We were expanding into new markets, new opportunities. Everything my grandparents built was finally being honoured. Haley was turning into an incredible executive. She would be ready for VP within a year. We sat on the deck watching the sunset, drinking wine that actually tasted good instead of wine that just cost a lot. My grandmother raised her glass to knowing your worth. I clinked mine against hers. To writing your own rules. And in that moment, with the sun setting over water, like liquid gold with 34 years of toxicity finally lifted, I understood. Family is not about blood, not about last names or inheritance or obligation. Family is respect, loyalty, love given freely, not earned through suffering. I finally had that, not from the people who raised me, but from the people I chose. My grandmother, who saw me when no one else did. Haley, who looked up to me. The team who showed up every day because they wanted to. That was family. Everything else was just biology. And biology means nothing without love. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had to walk away from people who were supposed to love you? Have you ever been made to feel small by the people who should have lifted you up? Drop a comment and let me know your story because you are not alone. If this resonated with you, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories about taking back your power. And remember this, you are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. And sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply living well.